Միացյալ ազգերի կազմակերպությունում կանանց կարգավիճակին նվիրված 62-րդ միջազգային համաժողովին զուգընթաց Նյու Յորքում տեղի ունենում հասարակական կազմակերպությունների միջոցառումներ, այդ թվում նաև Meaningfulworld, բազմանշանակալից աշխարհ կազմակերպության միջոցառումը, որի մասին մեր պատրաստած ակնարկը այժմ սիրով ուզում եմ ներկայացնել ձեր ուշադրությանը.
The 62nd session of the Commission of the Status of Women took place at the United Nations headquarters in mid-March. The Association for Trauma Outreach and Prevention, ATOP Meaningfulworld, was honored to present a parallel event titled Sex, Power and Money, Empowering Rural Women Globally. The symposium explored how women are affected by poverty, loss of power in their communities, and sexual violence in Africa, Middle East, Caucasus, and Caribbean. The organization has worked with women in 46 countries around the world who are subjected to economic and human rights inequities, sexual assault during the trauma of war, genocide, domestic violence, and other forms of abuse. The room was filled with like-minded participants from around the world, standing room only, as the event began with a moment of silence to gather and connect with women's experiences worldwide in thought and spirit, followed by opening remarks by program's chair Dr. Ani Kalajian, founder and president of ATOP Meaningfulworld. Dr. Kalajian spoke about the importance of understanding women's experience and engage men in a process. She shared her poem, The Other Side of Love, about love as a motivator for growth. The first speaker for the session was Dr. Helena Verdelli, an associate professor of clinical psychology and director of clinical training at Teachers College, Columbia University. She is also the founder and director of a Teachers College Global Mental Health Lab. She has worked with women in southern Uganda and Colombia, war-affected adolescents in camps in northern Uganda, distressed patients in primary care in Gao, India and Haiti, and war-affected Syrian refugees in Lebanon, among others. Dr. Verdelli highlighted that rural women are more vulnerable to mental health issues than men at the rate of 2-to-1 due to lack of education, increased violence and abuse, and multiple pregnancies.
So in many Arab states where we work these days, women do much better, actually, and they attend much more frequently universities. It's much harder for them to find jobs. And then in places like Uganda and low-resource areas, we see multiple pregnancies. Women don't want to have 9 children. Men want to, insist. Which, creates a lot of infections, terrible anemia, and exhausts the resources of women.
Next, attendees of the session were treated to beautiful pieces performed on classical guitar by Dr. Robert Kinoyan. The concert followed by an invocation led by Reverend Winnie Vargas, Director of Justice and Reconciliation at Trinity Church on Wall Street. The second speaker, Dr. Jose Alejandro Vasquez, representative of the International Federation of the Family Development to the UN, an associate fellow of the Research Institute for Culture and Society, spoke about the importance of investing in family policies as tools to support the UN Sustainable Development Goals in rural areas. Dr. Vasquez highlighted the great need to improve access for rural women, especially to quality education and land ownership, and to lessen women's burden for unpaid domestic work. The third speaker, Dalal Al-Majed, a graduate student of Teachers College, Columbia University, spoke about her study on the harassment of women in Kuwait. She investigated two hypotheses: that women in Kuwait view street harassment from men as normal rather than deviant behavior, and that women are desensitized to harassment behavior, which leads to its normalization.
Kuwaiti women, as I already mentioned, mostly experience mild levels of harassment, but it happens so often that it's normalized. About 75% of the respondents agreed that they severely dislike being victimized by people from both genders. Further, an almost similar fraction stated that the first exposures to the vice were the most annoying and uncomfortable to them. Repetition got them used to these forms of harassment that it is no longer thought of as harassment, rather it's an expectation. The effects of sexual harassment are a major concern given the possible impacts they can have on the mental health of the victim. Theories of sexual objectification hold that constant exposure of women to sexual harassment leads to persistent self-monitoring. This creates a state of self-consciousness that nurtures an internal feeling of anxiety and self-esteem issues. Continued exposure to sexual harassment can possibly contribute to insidious trauma, which is a collection of tiny, barely noticeable traumatic happenings that build up over time, which can be characterized by symptoms of psychological trauma.
In closing, Dr. Kalajian led the group in her signature heart-to-heart circle of gratitude and love for attendees to experience a sense of connectedness with one another, women and men across the globe, and all of humanity.
I'm passionate about peace and harmony and love. But the thing is that it's been centuries that women are suffering. I mean, even at the UN, this is the 62nd Commission of Status of Women. 62 years. By this time, we need to be mature and wiser and understanding and come together in harmony, but we're not doing that. You know, right in America, in North Carolina, men can continue to have sex even if the woman is saying no, is not consenting. This is in our American government. Can you believe that? And then in Nepal, women are sent, little girls and women are sent in the woods because why? They have their period. They're menstruating. And they believe that if they touch me while I'm menstruating, that they're going to get sick. This is how men are thinking in some villages in Nepal. So we need to go on this rampage of psychoeducation, educating people about health and mental health, that this is isolating women, and when they are isolated, there are more emotional problems that are going to be inherently increasing in them. And when women have emotional problems, guess what? The whole family is going to be sick because they're the ones taking care of the whole village, the children and the water, and making sure that the children are fed and are not sick, and or when they're sick, they're taken care of. So I just want to continue on reinforcing the important value that it's not about just empowering women. We need to empower the men and find out what's going on in their psyche so we can increase their sense of self so they don't need to define their masculinity through hurting or discriminating women. I mean, we're having the same problem in Armenia. And although the government is in denial, but finally, thank God, they passed a law against abusing women and definitely setting boundaries. Before, they didn't even have any laws about when a man hurts a woman. They didn't have any laws to protect the women. And the women are forced to go back to the abusive husband. How many countries? Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Armenia, Haiti, Bulgaria. I can count like 58 countries that I know of that we have worked in where women are subjected to discrimination and where the men are in denial. So our passion is to educate the men and the women that there is a better choice It's not about putting one another down. It's knowing about what your gifts are, and both men and women, both genders, can contribute to society and the world to create harmony. I mean, it's also 2 goals in the SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, both on equity and equality. And you know, here in America, again, women need 2 degrees to get the salary of 1 degree that the man attains. This is not fair, and this is not healthy for the universe nor our society. And then women and men become resentful and then unconsciously hurt each other more.
Well, I'm passionate of this topic about family policies because here the UN is the most comprehensive and holistic approach to tackling all the SDGs, so actually most of them. I come here every day and advocate for family policies and share practices, good practices usually, between member states, organizing side events, and also doing consultancy for the member states if they want to organize any project, research project to get, retrieve data from countries and NGO activity. But I thought the UN was going to be more against or more cold about the family, but they're really active on family issues and family policies and really open to any suggestion. Not only the system, but also the member states and the other NGOs. They're open to new solutions, new approaches, and the family approach is one of them. This year, well, last year, 2 months ago, we had a new resolution. It was approved, it was not by vote, but also consensus, and new paragraphs to the resolution were added. And that was wonderful because more situations of the family were added, like single parent, intergenerational relations, the role of grandparents at home, parenting education, which is our NGO objective around the world in 66 countries as IFFD. So I'm really optimistic how the way forward that we have now, the future.
I'm very interested in this issue. It was about women and mothers and their mental health and how it affects their families, their children, and it was about depression, especially in third world countries, which is not an addressed issue, and how it affects the children, their health, their nutrition, and their outlook on life. Some women think of it that it's part of their heritage or they have to live with it and they don't report it, but it really is harassment and should be punishable by law. But they get by because women think, well, this is the nature of the man and it's okay. But eventually it takes its toll on them psychologically because, they feel like they are not equal and they have to be submissive. And this is not what women is. Women is strong and we want to be leaders and we are ones who take care of the family. We are the backbone of the family and the children depend on us. So we have to be healthy and treated as equals without harassment.